The frightening extent of cartel torture techniques reaches no boundaries in a world where innocence is broken by unimaginable depravity. Innocent lives are cruelly entrapped, exposed to a nightmare underworld where survival hangs on a thread, from the depths of horror to the edge of despair. What is even happening in this world? And why do cartels kidnap innocent people? Let's find out. A disturbing chapter in the dismal history of cartel violence delves into the depths of human depravity. These criminal organizations' nefarious strategies go beyond their adversaries to innocent people, unlucky enough to get ensnared in their web as they tighten their power. Torture is a nefarious tool to generate fear, get information, and assert power. The infamous cartels have a long history of being infamous in the shadowy world of organized crime for their violent tactics and ingenious schemes. These criminal organizations have created a variety of horrifying forms of torture that leave their victims permanently scarred. They are driven by a need for control and a desire for power. From the abhorrent act of slicing off hands to the horrific manufacture of limb steak, the scope of their depravity has no bounds. What is more intriguing is the fact that they not only make use of brute force on their counterparts, but also on innocent people on the streets. One notorious killer from Australia named Ivan Milat went to jail because one of his innocent victims flew over to Australia for helping out the authorities. There is not one example, in fact, there are many, and each cartel has its own way of torturing, abducting, and exterminating people. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel is one of the most notorious gangs, notorious for its cruelty. They have a reputation for persistent cruelty and have mastered the art of pain, using various horrifying techniques. Their strategies include targeting innocent citizens, relatives, law enforcement officers, and competing cartel members. El Paseo de la Muerte, often known as the Walk of Death, is one of the favored methods used by these cartels. This technique entails kidnapping a victim and putting them through a terrifying experience. The victim must pass past a queue of cartel members with machetes, baseball bats, and other brutal instruments of attack. Each member violently beats the victim, leaving them bruised, broken, and frequently on the verge of death. This gory spectacle deters those who dare challenge the cartel's rule. La Limpia, or the cleansing, is another horrifying torture technique cartels use. Extreme physical suffering is inflicted on victims, frequently through deformity or mutilation. In the aftermath of these criminal organizations, a horrifying and terrible path of misery is left in their wake, with fingers being cut, being removed, and bodies mutilated. Such horrible actions are committed to terrorize and convey a chilling message to those who might resist them. Cartels occasionally use a tactic known as el pozolero, or the stew maker. This technique includes removing all traces of human presence by dissolving corpses in huge vats of acid or chemicals. Both guilty and innocent victims are coerced into these horrific baths, where their bodies are degraded to a vile slime. The cartel's brutal skill in erasing their victims is a glaring reminder of their mercilessness. Equally horrible to the physical brutality is the mental suffering that victims endure. Cartels frequently participate in el columpio, or the swing. With their limbs shackled and free to swing, the victims in this technique are hanged from a ceiling or tree. Excruciating pain, muscular exhaustion, and joint dislocation are all effects of this protracted duration of suspension. It is a technique used to weaken the victim's will so they are entirely obedient to their captors. Those lucky enough to endure these ordeals frequently suffer permanent psychological and physical scars. Those who have survived cartel torture struggle to reintegrate into society because they are tormented by nightmare recollections and live in constant fear of reprisal. Because cartel violence affects much more people than just the direct victims, the effects on their families and communities are as devastating. Although the specifics of cartel torture techniques are horrifying, it is crucial to comprehend the larger setting in which these crimes occur. Environments with corruption, destitution, and lax law enforcement favor cartel growth. They take advantage of these circumstances by preying on the defenseless and innocent to build their reign of terror. A multifaceted strategy comprising effective law enforcement, socio-economic development, and international collaboration is needed to address the underlying causes of cartel violence. Torture techniques used by cartels are a horrible reality that should serve as a somber reminder of the ongoing fight against organized crime. The fight calls for unflinching commitment, resources, and the will to free the helpless from evil. We can only hope to break up these criminal networks and provide those hurt by their heinous deeds a shred of hope via sustained efforts. In addition to the way we've just mentioned, a dismal range of techniques have been used by cartels to inflict the most pain and terror. The flaying is one of the most often utilized techniques. This terrible technique includes removing the victim's skin, frequently in a very slow and methodical manner. The cartels torture their victims to terrible suffering by using intelligent devices to scrape away layers of skin. Flaying is a cruel punishment to crush a victim's spirit and establish power. Beyond that, waterboarding simulated drowning and was developed from interrogation tactics. It is confined on a tilted board so the victim's head is lower than her feet. Water is poured into the face while a towel covers it, creating a terrible feeling of suffocation. Serious psychological and bodily harm may result from this technique. Torture using electric shocks entails delivering unpleasant electrical currents to the victim's body. Typically, electrodes are linked to numerous body parts, including temperate regions like the genitalia, to carry out this approach. The voltage of the shocks can range from low to very high, causing severe agony and frequently leaving long-lasting physical and psychological scars. The cartels then use pliers or other instruments to forcibly remove each victim's one at a time in this cruel technique. This surgery causes tremendous agony and can result in serious infections and lifelong deformities. The removal of nails is frequently done as a form of punishment or to get data. In the past, fire has been used as a form of torture by cartels, causing severe bodily harm and excruciating anguish. Victims may be tied up or shackled before being exposed to burning materials, such as hot metal rods or open flames. Deliberately and repeatedly coming into contact with fire can cause serious burns, disfigurement, and even death. Sexual violence is a common tool used by cartels for control, degrading treatment, and punishment. Both male and female victims are subjected to violent, frequently in public or as a method of coercing cooperation. The victims of this type of torture suffer long-lasting mental and physical scars. Forced disappearances are a horrific strategy used by cartels, even though they are not a form of torture in and of themselves. Victims are kidnapped and then mysteriously disappear, putting their families in constant distress and dread. Communities are terrorized by this tactic, which also serves as a sobering reminder of the cartel's might and influence. These practices are used as control, punishment, and psychological warfare tools to subdue the human spirit and keep the cartels in power. These torture techniques' heinousness and brutality are a sharp reminder of the urgent need for international cooperation and concerted action to fight organized crime. Society may contribute towards a better future by exposing these abhorrent practices and supporting attempts to break up criminal networks. People who become caught in the web of organized crime or who constitute a danger to the cartel's authority and activities are frequently the main targets of the torture techniques used by the cartels. These terrible crimes might have many targets, representing many racial and ideological groups. Rival gangs and cartels frequently engage in bloody turf battles and power struggles. Captured or kidnapped members of competing organizations become perfect candidates for torture, used to establish control, get information, or spread terror among opposing groups. Contrarily, the cartels place a high value on loyalty and secrecy within their ranks. People are frequently tortured when they are thought to cooperate with law authorities or betray the organization. The goal is to extract confessions, uncover potential informants, and send a chilling message to others contemplating betraying the cartel. Cartels frequently target authorities engaged in anti-cartel operations in their efforts to preserve control and escape prosecution. Cartels torture individuals to intimidate and discourage law enforcement, obstruct investigations, and undermine the legal system. Additionally, cartels regularly use kidnapping to extract ransom payments and other forms of extortion. These captives, frequently unarmed citizens or people with valuable connections or resources, may endure brutal torture while their captors try to get money or gain influence over their families. Innocent bystanders regularly find themselves caught in crossfires in regions with strong cartel influence. to retain control over the local populace, or to send a message to communities that reject or oppose the cartel's existence. These people may be the targets of random acts of violence and torture. It is significant to highlight that victims of cartel torture go beyond these classifications. No one who defies the cartel's rule of terror or is considered a danger to their business operations is spared. Targets can include journalists, human rights advocates, and those who unintentionally get involved in cartel business and suffer horrible torture. The cartel's selection of victims is to uphold their supremacy, spread terror, and eliminate any perceived challenges to their operations. They want to create power, maintain an atmosphere of dread, and dissuade others from resisting them by inflicting such horrific suffering and brutality. It is critical to raise awareness of the suffering of individuals impacted and support programs to counter cartel influence in the face of such heinous injustice. Our common obligation is to make sure that the tales of the guilty and innocent victims are heard, and that the cycle of violence is ended because they deserve justice.